One of the joys of hosting this program are the guests, are the people that I get to interact with, engage with. And Brian Murphy, host of the KNBR Morning Show, is no exception. Murph is my boy, and we're going to talk Warriors, maybe a little Niners, but mostly Warriors next. It's the Golden.
They always find something to nitpick, and that's because there's expectations for us to win. It was a pretty crazy night.
Woo! Let's go!
In a minute, I'ma need a sentimental man or woman to pump me up. Come on and break me off. 'Cause I get what I want and I like what I see. If you got
Monday. Welcome to the Golden Days. I'm your host, Cyrus Saatsaz. You can follow me on Threads, on Instagram at Dog Wild. Yes, I'm over on Twitter at Surf Journalist, and the program is on all social media platforms at Golden Days Pod. My guest today, Brian Murphy. You could follow him at least on Twitter. I'll let you plug away on the other social media platforms you may be on at KNBR Murph. Brian Murphy, it is great to see you, brother. How the hell are you doing, man?
Side dog, it's good to see you, bro. Look at us with our gray beards, man.
I know, dude. I still got some good coloration on the sides. This happened early. I remember you when you did not have grays. That's how far back we go.
I know, bro. I know. Hey, man, sign of wisdom. That means all my takes are going to be wise and experienced. But it's fun to visit, man. You got me in a good spot. Nap done. 49er loss digested. Warriors going to get going a little bit. Giants playing out the string. We got no shortage of topics, bro.
Absolutely. And this is a Warriors show, so we'll stick to the Dubs. And before we get going, I got to give some love to the official sponsor of Golden Days, and that's Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. They have every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. And this is where this is our one excuse to talk football real fast. What the hell happened to the Niners yesterday? They not only did not cover the spread, but they lost. Depends on who you ask what's worst. What happened there in a nutshell, man?
First of all, if I was using Bet Online, I'm in a pool with a bunch of dudes and dirty little secret. I said this. I took the Vikings in the points. I did.
Smart.
I just, dude. I've been around long enough to know. Short week, road game, 10 a.m. dome. I used to cover the Niners as a beat writer. Those games are weird. The energy is strange. I thought the Niners would win, but like a gnarly 20-16, 20-17 game. So I thought the Vikings would cover, but I didn't think the Vikings were that impressive, and I didn't know if Sam Darnold had it in him to make the throws that he made. But brother, he made some throws, including the 97-yarder that changed everything, obviously. And we could break down the George Odom, Jair Brown mess up. But it's a hard game. The failed fourth down, the block kick, the 97-yard touchdown, Brock's 2 turnovers in the third quarter were no box of chocolates, bro. But, still maybe a little CMC effect, even though they played great against the Jets without him, missing him on third downs as a little security blanket. And Brian Flores, the D coordinator for the Vikings, he's got their number, man. He dials it up. If you look at it, he knows how to pressure Brock up the middle and the Niners up the middle. So it was a weird assignment. I'm not going to freak out about it. My freak out level is very mediocre. Go beat the Rams, get back on track.
I feel like that was the message and I'm glad you said that I think should be conveyed to at least the Niner faithful, the marketing term for the Niner fans, which is that don't panic over this game. It was just a lot of fluky stuff going on. If there's a reassurance to Niners fans before we start talking Warriors, is that I feel like Brock Purdy is passing the test. This was the year I feel like, and it's still early, it's only 2 games in, but he's everything. Like if Brock Purdy is not the real deal, the Niners are screwed. And I think he's proving now. He looks sharp. He's got an arm. Would you agree, man, that Brock Purdy, it's safe to say that's not a concern for the Niners, right?
I would definitely. In fact, in each of the first 2 games, he's made several really, really nice throws, in pocket pressure, 2 tight windows. I mean, I know the 2 turnovers are what you think about. Quarterbacks are going to turn the ball over. It happens. I hated the one that slipped out of his hands. But for the most part, if you go through the tape of the first 2 games, he's made several nice tight window throws. And he's got a lot of pocket courage, too. He stands there as the pocket is collapsing and will still at the last second go to that last read. So I'm very pleased so far. He's not, Joe Montana. He's not Steve Young, but he's certainly, and even though I had a soft spot for Jimmy G because he was Italian and he took us to the bowl, but he's an upgrade, bro. He's an upgrade.
Yeah, I like what I see from Purdy. And look, even though you can't bet on the Warriors for another few weeks, exhibition starts early October, so football's where it's at. And if you think you know your stuff, get in on BetOnline's $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. And when the game's over, kick back, put your feet up, pour yourself a stiff one, maybe light them up if you got them, and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today or get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here. And Murph, we're talking Warriors. I want to play the soundbite from Brandin Podziemski in just a second because he said something interesting, which ties into the theme of today's show, which is whether or not the Warriors are past their prime, whether or not the window is fully shut on the team still being a contender. This has been an interesting offseason. Nothing's happened for months, Murph. So you can imagine the challenge of hosting a show like this and why I'm also thrilled that you're here, among many reasons. But what is your initial impression in terms of the additions? DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson, Buddy Hield, who Sophia Jones 2 weeks ago provided a phenomenal analysis of his in terms of his off-the-ball movement, which we didn't know about until then, is part of the reason why you tune into this show. But the point is, they added those 3 players. They lost Clay. They lost Chris Paul. And I'm sure there's a lot of other things that happen as well. But what is your summary, your analysis of the Warriors offseason? Were you happy with it? Does it leave a lot left to desire? Your thoughts?
Okay. So I think in general, my general take on the Warriors is, believe it or not, I'm more positive than most. I think a lot of people feel like the easy take is they're done. It's over. And it's symbolic and real. Klay Thompson gone, right? It's like, it's really easy to say that's it. The Splash Brothers are no more. The Warriors are no more. They were a freaking play-in team last year. Bro, I mean, watch the trend, right? Watch the trend down line. And I see that. I'm not blind to that. But I feel like, to use this, what's the analogy? I'm trying to think of the words. I've heard the phrase in the corporate world, breaking bones has to be done to change things. I know, right?
Okay.
Violent, right? But I mean, it's like I'm a big baseball guy, right? And Farhan Zaidi is driving us nuts because all he does is tinker on the margins
Right.
and doesn't have the balls to make a big move. Like the Warriors finally had the balls to make the big move. Listen, nobody's going to dispute Klay Thompson's place in Bay Area lore. He's one of the most iconic athletes in the history of San Francisco Bay Area sports. That goes back to the San Francisco Seals and the 49ers at Kezar. I'm talking about everything. In Bay Area sports lore, he's on that like short list of like top 5, 10, 20 athletes beloved. But they couldn't keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. They had to change their energy. They had to change their roster. So as much as I love Klay, I born and raised in Marin County. He lives in Belvedere. He's on the boat. I get it. This is not salty at all. But they had to change the energy. They had to change their look. And quite frankly, they had to get younger. We didn't mention Chris Paul, too, a 39-year-old who they I don't want to say they got rid of, but they didn't retain him, right? So they didn't they got rid of a 39-year-old Chris Paul. And how old's Klay? 34, 35, something like that?
He's going to be 34 this year. Yeah. And
they brought in the guys you mentioned. DeAnthony Melton's 26 years old? I think Buddy Hield and Kyle Anderson are both about 30. And Lindy Waters III is 26 years old. They drafted Kenton Post. And they have those 4. The second timeline we were talking about, back to James Wiseman, right?
Remember and you're right. Clay's 34 currently. He turns 35 this year. Sorry to interrupt. But
no, you're good. That supports my argument. So that second timeline we thought was blown up when they traded Wiseman. But all of a sudden, Kuminga, Podziemski, TJD, Trace Jackson Davis, and of course, Moses Moody. We haven't even mentioned the fact that Draymond is still there and Andrew Wiggins, the mystery man of mystery men, is still there. So I actually am kind of intrigued to think, listen, am I saying that they're an automatic championship contender along the lines of the Minnesota Timberwolves, who are raging, or the Oklahoma City Thunder, who had an incredible year, or obviously the Denver Nuggets, who shockingly were knocked out of the playoffs last year but remain a fearsome team? I'm not necessarily there yet, and I still think, and we can get into it later in the conversation about, like, do they have another move left in them? mid-season, right? That might be something that's coming, and we can talk about obviously the attempts to get Paul George and Lauri Markkanen and whether that was necessary. But even without Paul George and Lauri Markkanen, believe it or not, I'm mildly intrigued by the change. Keeping Steph, obviously, what are you going to say? Global superstar, intergalactic superstar. Should be emperor of the universe. If anybody had, forget 2024 vote Curry. You know what I mean, dude? It's like, forget it. But, there's a lot to like. Curry's back. And guys, we can talk about this too. Draymond Green suspended for how many games last year? Bro, they won. I wrote down my notes here. What did they win? They won 46 last year, right?
Correct.
Here's an interesting stat. 46 got them the play-in last year. 2 years ago, they won 44 and got to the Western Conference semis. 2 years ago or 3 years ago, they won 53 and won the championship. Like, what's the difference between 46 wins and 53 wins? Is it Draymond Green being on the court? Is it a couple of those crazy losses they had? Remember the 3-pointer that Chet Holmgren threw up and things like that?
Of course, yeah. And oh my God, you bring that up, and my immediate thought is, why was Wiggins defending him? And yeah, of course I remember that. Yes.
So in other words, you asked my question. I gave you a long answer.
No, long answers are good. Long answers are good. Continue on. Sorry.
I actually am more intrigued, and I guess the short word is optimistic that they made the change they had to make. They couldn't keep running back the same guys. And who isn't D'Anthony Melton, right? Who is Kyle Anderson? I'm a UCLA guy. I've always liked his all-around game since Westwood back in those days, Throw in this rookie, Quentin Post. He's probably not going to play much, but who knows if he can play a little bit. The BC guy who can shoot the three, Gary Payton's back. I just feel like there's like 12 guys who might be able to really play. Like they're pretty deep. Now, again, the West is beastly. It's crazy good. And, the Warriors probably only have themselves to blame. They created this monster where every team in the West is like, we got to get good, man. We got to beat the Warriors. And they have now. But I'm excited. To be honest, I'll put it this way. I'm more excited for this team now than I would have been had they kept Clay.
I 100% agree with you. I feel like the Clay move, and we take a step back here in terms of Clay's legacy, right? You brought up just his importance to the Bay Area. I mean, the guy's going to get a statue. My request every time we bring up the statue talk is make sure the Rocco is included in the statue, right? I feel like you have to have an English Bulldog next to Clay on that statue, just for obvious reasons. While Clay's importance is immeasurable, it's obvious. Just like the Niners in the early 90s, when it was time for change, Eddie D did not hold back, man. He, like, Joe Montana got traded. Ronnie Lott was, back then they called free agency a thing like Plan B or Option B or something like that. Roger Craig they let go of. I mean, Eddie D laid the blueprint for what to do with a dynasty when your main players are aging. You move on, right? Change is needed. Change is welcomed. So I'm with you there. I feel like fresh blood is welcomed. What were your thoughts, by the way? We're going to play this Brandin Podziemski soundbite in a second, but what were your thoughts on the Warriors, if reports are correct, basically choosing Brandin Podziemski over Lauri Markkanen? Did you support it? I've said this before. I sound like a broken record. I apologize, but it was very reminiscent of 10 plus years ago when the Warriors were in a similar position with Klay Thompson, where they could have traded him for Kevin Love, and they decided, no, we're not moving on from Klay. He's too important. Does Brandin Podziemski carry that same level of cachet as Klay in this regard? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a great question. And Podziemski is super intriguing because it's funny. When they draft last June's draft, June of 2023, I was more excited for Trace Jackson Davis than Brandin Podziemski.
Same.
I'm big on the 4-year guys in college. That's one of my things. You could see the difference between guys who play 4 years in college versus the guys who barely play. And I was looking at Podziemski. I'm like, this guy barely played. He played the WCC. I mean, he left Illinois after getting no playing time. And his backstory wasn't even that decorated. He kind of didn't really get serious about basketball until like 8th grade. In fact, you'll see from the clip, I think he was playing baseball, believe it or not.
Correct.
But I was like, does this guy have the athleticism to hang in the NBA? Can he run and can he jump and can he be physical? He didn't look to me like a guy whose physicality could make it in the NBA. Damn, was I shocked and surprised mightily. He has a sneaky phicality. First of all, I mean, we all know about taking the charges, right? That's an obvious.
Led the NBA, which is still crazy to me.
But it speaks to a lot. That speaks to, yes, that's a great stat. It also speaks to who he is as a player, which is so much more than just sitting at the 3-point line and gunning. The lost art of playing the game of basketball, right? I mean, I know it sounds like the old head who wants the Showtime Lakers back and all that stuff, but no, he played the game of basketball at both ends. Now, my big thing was, is he going to be a defensive liability? That was the knock. He actually played better defense than I thought, and he also appears to be an incredible worker, and he's very hungry. Like, you can't – there's a lot of guys, they come to the league, they get money in their pocket, and you don't know how it's going to treat them. He appears to be a guy who's hungry as hell, and he wants to get better. And so I'm very – now, again, we only have 1 year to go on. This is very, very shallow sort of what should I say? Just a small sample size is what I'm looking for. But you know, Markkanen obviously more decorated. We know that he's older. He's how much older? 8 years older than him or whatever and all that.
Yeah,
but
7, 8.
It was an interesting move by Dunleavy, and Dunleavy said this, and you didn't know whether to believe him. Drafting and developing is going to be their plan, and it's like that's such it's a phrase, right? What does it mean, drafting and developing? We'll tell you what. You know, you look around, look at the 49ers. They draft and develop. They miss on some guys, but they draft guys like Fred Warner or Dre Greenlaw or guys like this, and they develop.
Mark Purdy.
Mark Purdy, George Kittle, Talanoa Hufanga, guys like this. Anyway, the point is that drafting and developing is the way to go. And the Warriors seem to have like the way those guys played last year, Trace Jackson-Davis, Brandin Podziemski, Moody. I know people can argue about his playing time and how Kerr used him, et cetera. And I know that's controversial. And then obviously we haven't even talked about the prize of them all, Jonathan Kuminga, who, you know, you could do every podcast from here on out about Jonathan Kuminga, right?
Yeah.
But so I thought it was an interesting move. I didn't hate it. I know the obvious low-hanging fruit was to go get Markkanen and pair him up, and you have to have 2 superstars. You know, is Kuminga going to be that superstar? You know, that's going to be one of the controlling. That's obviously one of the controlling questions going in. Again, I mentioned it to you a little earlier. They could have another move left in them at February. I mean, you know, Kevin Durant, you know, something like that could be out there. So, but to your original question, and history could prove me totally wrong, I kind of liked that they stuck with Podziemski. Now, believe me, had they gotten Markkanen, I'd have been delighted. You got 2 superstars, you're going to be a legitimate force in the West, but it would drain their depth dramatically. I mean, did we ever finalize with all the pieces they had to trade for Markkanen? It was a lot, right?
It would have been a lot. I don't know if the depth would have been hurt ultimately, just because the way the roster is set up there, it's so wing heavy, and that's mostly who you would have been trading for Lowry, who plays a position unlike anybody on the team outside of maybe Draymond Green. But I don't know if that would have been an issue. But I hear what you're saying, man. And when you talk about drafting and developing, that's the formula for this dynasty in the first place. I mean, that's how the Warriors got to be where they are. It wasn't because they were savvy with free agent signings. They drafted Steph, Clay, Draymond, who's a 4-year player, like you mentioned. You know, I don't know how much research you've done into this, Murph. And again, super thrilled to be joined by Brian Murphy here on Golden Days. He hosts the KNBR Morning Show. You can follow him on all social media platforms at KNBR Murph. How do you think this Quentin Post situation is going to get resolved? Right now, the Warriors are only about $500,000 below the cap, so they can't sign him unless they waive someone. And Guy Santos is the only player on the roster who does not have guaranteed money. So in theory, they could cut Guy Santos and replace him with Quentin Post. Otherwise, either you replace one of the two-way spots with Quentin, and then he's a two-way player for the year. Maybe he's a G League player for the year. Maybe a trade is coming, and this is why Quentin Post is in this position, because the team thought they would have had a trade by now. How do you think the Quentin Post thing is going to get resolved? I know it's not a big issue, but I'm curious because right now there's no way to sign him.
808 KNBR, your thoughts on Quentin Post. But no, we'll touch it. The one thing you said that's really intriguing to me is, are they done making moves? They could make a move in October. They really could. So let's just mark, you know, we still are learning Mike Dunleavy. We're still learning him. He's only been here, you know, a year or whatever. And he's intriguing. He's bold. He traded for Chris Paul. He traded Jordan Poole. He traded Jordan Poole for Chris Paul. He got rid of Klay Thompson. You know, I mean, this guy's interesting. He's an interesting dude. I know people are upset because in his first full year, they go to the play-in game. But again, I really honestly think the number one reason they're in the play-in bracket was Draymond Green missed so many freaking games due to suspension.
It didn't help. He got suspended. I looked it up. He got suspended for 12 games. He played 55 total because he also had some other mini suspensions.
Yeah, bro, it's like, dude, I mean, maybe my number one, keep him on the court, dude. There's such a different team when he's not getting suspended. But anyway, I'm interested in Post. Obviously, he's not a part of this year. And if they are going to be a championship team, and I get it, saying the Warriors are a championship contender right now might be a fool's errand right now, but I'm intrigued. To see what they can do and what Dunleavy's going to do, maybe in October, maybe in February. But in terms of Quentin Post, I don't really have a take hugely on that in sense of what they will do. I'll have to bone up on my post transaction knowledge, bro.
It's just literally, they're literally, I think that the most curious part for me is, like, why did you put yourself in this position where you literally cannot sign your lone draft pick?
Yeah, I mean, he's not dumb. He's got something. No. He's got something cooking.
Yeah, that's what I imagine.
If he's a two-way player, if he is a two-way player, that's fine too. Because we already mentioned, I mentioned 12 players. Let's go through this here. Like, so Steph, Dre, and Wiggs, right? And then the 4 kids: Kuminga, Pods, Moody, TJD. That's 7 right there. Peyton makes 8, and then you bring in Melton 9, Slow-Mo Anderson 10. Buddy Hield 11, Lindy Waters 12. I mean, you got 12 guys right there. There's not much playing time. And they've got 14. So I don't know who you missed that. I'm really glad you pulled up the roster because that's what I've been evaluating a lot this offseason. And the part of it that makes no sense to me, and I'd love to know if you've delved into this that much, if your research is as thorough as mine and has led to you being as perplexed as I am. How do you think they're going to find time for all these wings? Like, you look at the roster and you got your bigs are Trace Jackson Davis, Draymond, which is always kind of crazy to call him a big, but he is. Kevon Looney. And then I think that's Looney.
it.
I didn't mention Looney when I listed all those players.
Oh, gotcha. There you go. Which is great. So, but how do you think they're going to fit? Like, there's going to be wings. And this is why I think there's another move coming because there's no way you find time for all these players. Like, how do you think it's going to work out? Like, is there an odd man out? Your thoughts?
It's like Steve Kerr at the Paris Olympics not playing Jason Tatum. So, I don't know. Yeah. That's why I think there still might be a move coming. And you're right. There's too many wings right now. So that's something that we're going to have to address with Mike Dunleavy in a couple of weeks when they start out in Hawaii. They're going to do it out in Hawaii to get away from the prying eyes of the Golden Days podcast, bro.
I'm going to show up to Media Day first, and then they're going to run away from me. You're absolutely right. They're doing Media Day, and then they're bouncing to Hawaii. I love that move, don't you?
It's old school. When I went to college in Los Angeles in the 80s, and the Lakers used to do it all the time. It's kind of
call.
It's kind of how I used to remember. I think the Warriors did it back in the Al Attles days. And by the way, pour one out for my man, the great life of Al Attles. I mean, that's like, so I'm old enough to remember, man. I mean, 75 NBA Finals is like one of my first online memories because I have 2 older siblings.
You remember that?
They kind of rushed me along. I was 7.
Despite the grades, you're aging beautifully. I would never have guessed that you're old enough to remember the 75 finals. That's fascinating.
And I remember, because I had 2 older siblings, and when you have older siblings, you kind of get rushed along a little bit. Your awareness comes on. You come online a little faster, And
you have to, right?
I remember the 7. So I remember Al Attles. We had a poster of Al Attles in our family TV living room. So I don't know where the hell it came from, but my dad would call him. My dad always called him the Enforcer. I think he had it wrong. It was the Destroyer was his nickname. But my dad would always say, probably the Enforcer was something else and this and that. So I always kind of grew up with this reverence for him. When I finally got to meet him, it's kind of like, for me, it was like meeting Willie McCovey, like these icons, and or any great 49er from before our time. But point is that I digressed and I want to make sure I mentioned in this podcast the memory of the great Al Attles, probably the greatest Warrior of them all. But back to your wing thing, I don't know, man. That's a great question, and we're gonna have to see because you're right. You're flat out right. They have too many.
Yeah, and I feel like Moses Moody is going to be the odd man out. I that's my fear, and they're going to have to trade him, either play him or trade him. I feel almost bad for this kid at year 4, and his values probably plummeted. I digress. Speaking of guards that don't have to worry about playing time, let's play this soundbite I've been talking about for like 20 minutes now, and that's Brandin Podziemski. He was interviewed by NBC Sports Bay Area. Like you mentioned, he was at a Giants game. Was he just taking batting practice? Was that
because he's from Wisconsin, right? From near Milwaukee, and the Milwaukee Brewers were in town. So I think he went out to root on his hometown brew crew here.
Incredible. And if you're an NBA shooting guard, point guard, his natural position is the point, you're going to get invited to hit balls at a Major League Baseball stadium. And so Brandin Podziemski was invited. And then Laura Britt of NBC Sports Bay Area had a chance to catch up with him for a brief moment and brought up this one question, which is fascinating.
There's always chatter. And recently an anonymous NBA coach said that the Warriors this season are like a rock band that's past their prime. What gives you confidence in the team this year?
I think all of us, we don't love to hear that, but we love to hear it in the fact that we're going to do something that no one, expects us to do. And they don't think we're the Warriors that we were before. And for us, I think it's just the best feeling when you don't have anything to lose out there and you just go out and prove people wrong. And I think there's a bunch of guys with that mentality that thrive off proving people wrong. And I know Steph's one of those guys. And so just to be alongside him in the backcourt and, a combination with all of our other guys, we're just excited to prove people wrong.
And just to piggyback off that real fast, the quote he was referring to was from a publication that's been around for a long time. And I actually decided to do some research on them this morning because you always hear them mentioned. If you're a member of the media, you might run into a reporter from the publication from time to time in the media section where they seat you, and that's Heavy Sports. Which is, I don't know how they're making money, but they're around. They've been around since, Murph, you were, I believe, a reporter of the San Francisco Chronicle. Like 98, 99 was their origins. And I feel like every story that they publish, their sourcing's anonymous, like anonymous West, in this case, NBA coach, anonymous GM, anonymous agent. But I digress. The point is, it was an anonymous NBA coach who said that the Warriors are past their prime. What was your reaction to that clip and to the attribution and everything?
First of all, shout out Pods. He went yard at Oracle Park, hit a home run. Shows what kind of athlete he was, right?
Splash? Did he go in the water or no?
No. That'd be mighty. Although shout out Elliot Ramos, the first right-handed hitter ever to hit one in McCovey Cove yesterday on Sunday. But the point is like it's funny.
Really?
Oh yeah, you didn't know that?
No, I did not.
Oh yeah, Elliot Ramos, he 23-year-old Puerto Rican prospect for the Giants, became the first right-handed hitter to hit one in the Cove.
Incredible. That's a feat. That is
unbelievable. Oh, this kid's a stud, so we're excited for him next year. But anyway, point is that it's funny that it's Podziemski answering the question when he literally is the embodiment of the antithesis of that quote, right? I mean, like he and Kuminga are going to get a lot of minutes, so they can't be a rock band past their prime. I think that quote has merit if Clay stayed. If Clay and Chris Paul stayed, and I think that quote is probably more applicable to last year's team. I remember our big joke on the air was, so the Warriors, got knocked out in the Western Conference semi by the Lakers, and their answer was to get older and smaller. Ouch, you know what I mean? It was like, oh my God, they traded Jordan Poole, they brought in Chris Paul, and they got smaller and older, so it didn't work. So Chris Paul, and we said this at the start of the podcast, dude. Chris Paul and Klay Thompson are out, so I don't think that. Clearly, I don't think that quote is way more applicable to last year than this year. I would say if you're going to knock the Warriors, you would say they don't have a second superstar for Steph. And in the NBA, obviously it's a superstar-driven league. And if you don't have two superstars, you're toast. And the Warriors don't have two. That would be to me, if I'm an anonymous NBA coach, I'd say the Warriors don't have anybody to pair up with Steph. They're a one-trick pony. They're not going. That's what I would say is the easy knock on the Warriors.
Is this roster, Murph? I'm looking at the clock, and it's time for your second nap, so we'll wrap it up here in a second. And that's what happens, man. I worked your shift for 3 years. You've been doing. I know you did. I don't know how you've done it for 20. I bow to you, sir. That is incredible for you to be. What time do you get up? 3:30? Is that what's your lunch?
I cheat a little bit, bro. I go to 4:15. I cheat.
Oh, that's there you go.
I know it's reasonable, right? But that's why I have to have a nap. I have to have a nap.
It's still psychotic. 4:15 in the morning, dude. Like, oh my God.
You're coming in hot too. You're coming in hot at we used to start at 5:30. You used to come in hot, dude. Like right out of the gates, man. Takes on Brock Purdy at 5:15 in the morning. Let's go.
And now it's 6, which is a huge difference. But so I know you got to go, man. But here's the thing: before you go, and I feel like, given you and I are both born and raised Marin boys, we're both Bay Area natives, and so maybe you'll appreciate this final question because the Lakers, to me, they're a stain, man. They represent the part of California that we don't give to what's about. But since basically 2020, I feel like the Lakers represent a roster that the Warriors have yet to find a way to overcome. Right? You mentioned the second superstar next to Steph. No doubt that's going to be a potential issue if Kuminga, if Podziemski, if Wiggins, whoever that second person they expect to be doesn't live up to the hype. But I think an even bigger issue is their front court. I still don't know how you combat a team like the Lakers, who hypothetically could have a front court of LeBron, Anthony Davis, and then whoever you want to plug in for your third, whether it's Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood, they've got Rui Hachimura. They've got so many big dudes, and there's a few teams like that. Do you worry about the Warriors combating size? Is that a concern to you, or are you like Gary St. Jean, who was on the show last week and said, you know what, give me the wings? I like that kind of team. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I'm with you, dude. That is easily my biggest fear. Easily. I mean, it's not age. It's not Steph past his prime. He's not past his prime. It's not Draymond past his prime. Draymond can still be extremely effective. I'm not even that worried about like I like some of the young guys. I've been in the building for those Warriors-Lakers games, and Anthony Davis just freaking cooks when he plays the Warriors, dominates the Warriors. And it's like, I'm sitting there in my seat going, they got no answer for this. I mean, like, you'd like to think Looney, right? And you'd like to, TJD, you know,
that's our hope, right? That's our hope.
What? Yeah, I know. So that is easily, I told you, we started this podcast optimistic that they made the change they had to make. You know? They made the change they had to make, which was they had to turn the page on the Splash Brothers era. It was over, right? It was over. But if you had to identify, you know, so I would say, you know, second superstar question obviously is big, but that's not as big to me as big dude Jokic. I mean, we can go on and on and on. Bigs will destroy these guys, and it's a huge freaking problem. So, you know, the Warriors going to win a championship. I'm sitting here right now saying no because of that.
Yeah.
Which is sad to say. I mean, I know you got to like maximize Steph Curry's window, but easier said than done. Like, you can't just wave a wand and go get Jokic on your team, you know? So it's like, so while I'm excited, I'm sort of like excited in a new era kind of way, in a watching the kids kind of way, in that Dunleavy had the balls to kind of make the big moves kind of way. But there's easily a monster problem with bigs out there that's going to haunt, bro. And we can reconnect like mid-season to see how it's going, but
please,
that is easily my biggest fear. I'd say it keeps me up at night, but I'm so tired I fall asleep anyway.
It is what keeps me up at night, man. It's kind of pathetic that I care that as much as I do, but it's a concern. And Murph, the offer goes both ways, man. If you ever want me on your show, I'll spice it up for you, man, and I'll give you better insights and analysis than I don't know who you're bringing on for your Warriors experts besides yourself, but let me know. I'm always available for you. I will get up that early to make that commitment. But regardless, man, I would love to bring you back. I will say this, man. I'm excited. Keep the positivity, please. Keep the optimism, please, because I agree with you, man. There's enough change on this team where we all should, if you care about the Warriors or you love the basketball in general, you should be excited about how new this team is. Yeah. There are a lot of great pieces on this roster, and it's deep. But it's just the size thing worries me a little bit.
I mean,
you
we didn't get into Kuminga, who's like one of the most intriguing, 10 most intriguing guys in the NBA going into this year. I mean, he could. I mean, listen, again, hope is not a strategy, as we've learned. Billy Beane used to say all the time. But there's like legit reason to think that he could, you know, in the best case scenario, he could be a dude. He could be a dude, and if he's a dude, then we're talking about a different team. And again, I want to just continue to emphasize not to rule out another move maybe in October, and not to rule out a move mid-season either at the trade deadline. I think I'm interested in Dunleavy. He seems to be proactive. And also, we didn't even talk about the other part that he had to, you know, get under the apron. They finally did. I mean, you can't knock Lacob. He had to. Lacob to me, and again, podcast for another day, but Lacob is like right there with Eddie D as the greatest owners in the history of the Bay Area. And I can't even believe I'm saying this. Lacob might get the slight edge because he actually built the stadium that Eddie always wanted to build. And I know some people miss Oracle, as do I, but Chase is beautiful, man. It's awesome.
Beautiful.
It's gorgeous.
It is beautiful. And it had to be done. They needed a new home.
It's fabulous. And he gets the revenue from it, and he's going to keep this machine rolling because of the revenue he gets from it. But he was spending absurd amounts of money on the salary. I mean, you can't knock Lacob for wanting to trim back. He went for it, man. He's everything you want from an owner. And believe me, I'm not an owner apologist. I like to rip owners all I can. I mean, I really do. You've heard me with Jed and all that stuff. But, dude, Lacob is everything you ever want. He went for it big time. And now he's like, okay, we got to pare it back and take a different route. And Dunleavy's trying to be creative doing it. So, listen, we'll check back mid-season, see how it's going. Yes. I did see, first of all, shout out to the commenters. They're awesome. But the one who said he's been listening, the traveling person who said they've been listening since they were
Traveling Urquidez. Yes, right there. He was a member. He was a Golden Dazer. You can actually pay $3 a month and be an official member. And that's why I highlight his comments, because
I want to give that guy my big thumbs up. And I
think he represents a lot of people, Murph. Like there's a reason why you've been hosting that show for 20 years. You've clearly warmed yourself to this entire community, and that a community of what, 15 million people.
No, bro.
Congratulations.
Believe me, I see the Twitter comments in the text line. It ain't all sunshine. It ain't all sunshine and roses, bro.
Well, you know that the Twitter crowd and that text line does not represent reality, right?
I'm just joking. I'm just goofing around.
I know, that's the fringe.
The one thing that happened when Paulie Mack and I got, disrupted by the powers that be, the only positive thing to come out of it is, number one, I'll just confirm my love for Paulie forever. And number two is that the amount of comments we got were just like, it was incredible. It was overwhelming how kind and caring people were. And you realize the sort of the silly role that something as stupid as a morning radio show plays in people's lives, like as a companion, as they're getting ready to get grinded out in the morning. So we got so much love. I just want to thank everybody who ever commented on that. So that made us, put a little bit. But anyway,
it wasn't just the average Bay Area resident or streamer who listened to you online. It was also that Bob Myers gave you guys a shout out.
Yeah,
I know the Warriors held like a whole.
Paulie got calls from Bruce Bochy, John Lynch, Bob Myers, everybody. I mean, on and on and on. So I know.
Well, keep it going, dude.
Ronnie
Keep it going, man. You're doing something right, clearly. And whether you and Paulie reunite in some manner, I mean, I'm sure people would be ecstatic about that, but that's a discussion for another day.
I always say, never say never, bro.
Yeah.
Never say never, right?
Yeah. And Paulie and I are grabbing lunch this week. He comes on the show regularly. I'm looking forward to his show debuting.
I know. It'll be really fun,
another,
and hopefully
absolutely another piece of the migration from terrestrial radio, where you're still carrying the torch, to the digital.
Well, now we're on. Our show's on YouTube now every morning on Twitch,
true.
So you can see. You can see us. You can see.
And promote away on that note, man. Like people can follow you on. Is it?
Yeah, I'm on them all, man. Instagram, okay. KNBR Murph, Threads, KNBR Murph, Twitter, KNBR Murph, and Facebook. I mean, the old-fashioned Facebook, Brian Murphy.
Still there.
And then we're on every morning on YouTube. I think it's at KNBR 1045 for the old KFOG signal. Just put in KNBR, you'll find it. And then on the KNBR app takes you right to our Twitch, and you can watch us on that too. So,
gee, well, you got me beat there, man. I'm not even doing Twitch. Look at you.
It's pretty cool. I didn't even realize I downloaded the KNBR app years ago, and then I tapped on it one morning. I was like, oh, hey, there we are. So it's right there on your phone. So it's easy.
You're everywhere, man. Thank you for taking time out. I know, and I say this to everyone, man, like we're all busy people, and time is the most precious commodity we have. So for you to take 30+ minutes out to join me and this audience, thank you, brother. It means the world.
And listen, I'm intrigued by the Warriors. I'm more optimistic than most. Let's see.
I love it, dude. Optimism is welcomed, right?
We'll see. I'm not trying to be a fool about it. I'm intrigued by the turn. We'll see what happens.
That's fair, brother. That is fair. KNBR, the sports leader. All right, Murph. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. And follow Brian Murphy one more time at KNBR Murph. We always joke about what that handle would be if you ever eventually left the network.
It's like Kerry. I think you go to what Kruger did, Sports Larry K. So you just go.
There you go. Who's back with you, by the way? Who's actually back at KNBR?
Crazy, bro. Crazy.
It's always full circle, man. Thank you, everyone. Murph, I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Love you, Side Dog. Take care, buddy.
You too, brother. Yeah. We'll be back at this soon. Bye-bye.